Yeah, turn them speakers up. From the black top to the bright lights. This is Big Steve No Ball. Big Steve No Ball. Big Steve No Ball. Big Steve No Ball. Yeah, we call it how we see it. NBA, college, overseas. If they hoopin', we believe it. Big three.
Hello, welcome back to Big Steve Knows Ball. I am your host, Big Steve. I want to thank you for joining me again. As promised, man, I'm going to cover pretty much all the exciting action from week one of the Big Three. Me and my wife were able to make it out there for part of our 10th anniversary. That was part of our itinerary. On our way into the stadium, I got to meet Dakari Butler of the Detroit Amps. Took some pictures with him. That was a pretty cool experience. But yeah, let's jump right into it, man. We got a lot to cover, including that viral fight, the viral fights that took place in week one. Let's jump right into those. Okay, so for the first game of the year, we had the DMV Trilogy versus the Detroit Amps. The Detroit Amps were my pick to win the title. That was, of course, before, ISO Joe went down with the injury, or before they revealed that ISO Joe wasn't going to be playing. But still, I'm going to be riding with the Detroit Amps until the wheels fall off. They have a very loaded squad, even without ISO Joe. They have Dante Green, who's a Big Three vet. They have Corey Brewer, who's won the title, Defensive Player of the Year. They have Nas Core, who's been to the last two championships. They have Chuck Garcia, who used to play for the Ghost Ballers. And they also have Dakari Butler, who I mentioned before, who I got to take a picture with. So that was pretty cool. They're going up against the DMV Trilogy, led by Captain Jack, Steven Jackson, probably the best coach in Big Three history. And he has a squad, man. He has Earl Clark, he has James Johnson, longtime NBA vet, first year in the Big Three. Also has Willie Reed, who is the newcomer to the Big Three, as well as Jordan McRae, a 6'6" point guard. So they have a pretty big squad, man. They have nobody on that team pretty much that's under 6'6". So you pretty much have an idea of the way they want to play. And that is exactly how they played in game one. They were downhill. They were attacking the rim. Everything was at the rim and putting pressure on the rim and forcing the Detroit Amps to guard the rim, basically. And it took the Detroit Amps a long time to adjust to that. The Trilogy, they jumped out fast and they jumped out to a lead. They went into the half with a lead. And then they jumped out and got a pretty substantial lead in the second half until the Detroit Amps were able to close the gap. But even then, it was too little, too late. Just too much DMV Trilogy, too much Earl Clark, who had 18 and 11. James Johnson had 17 and 9. Those guys were just going downhill and constantly attacking the rim. And it was a solid game plan because they wound up winning 51-46. Captain Jack, I guess he said, we're not starting off 0-4 this year. We're going to start off on a winning note. We're going to start off 1-0 and put pressure on the rest of the league. Now, as far as the Detroit Amps, I still have them as going in the championship. This was just a small setback. They're going to learn how to play together. They're going to adjust. I think Nas Core is going to take this league by storm. He has his own team now. He's not a second fiddle anymore. He is the guy. So I still think they're going to take the steps to make the championship. This was just a minor setback in week one. Let's move on to the next game. Okay, man. Okay. Game two. This is the Miami 305 versus the LA Riot. This is the game that pretty much garnered all the attention last year because of the scuffle with Lance Stevenson and Dwight Howard, where they wrestled each other to the floor. They were both ejected. So they're kicking off week one again. One interesting note this time around, there was no Reggie Evans. Reggie Evans is out with an injury. That bodes well for the LA Riot in this game because Dwight is a banger, man. You need a banger to go up against Dwight. And there is no bigger banger in this league than Reggie Evans. So that put Miami 305 at an immediate disadvantage. And it forced guys like Michael Beasley to try to guard Dwight Howard. Now, Michael Beasley is a great basketball player, but he is not an inside interior defensive presence. So stopping Dwight Howard was going to be a tough task. I do believe that's the reason why those two gentlemen got tangled up, is because he's trying to guard Dwight. Dwight has elbows and shoulders going into his chest. And I think Michael Beasley got a little frustrated and they just got locked up. Michael Beasley fell, jumped up, started going at the team from the LA Riot. So he wound up being ejected. So they were already short Reggie Evans, and now you lose Michael Beasley. So later on in the game, Lance Stevenson hurts his leg, but he's still a trooper, man. He's still out there hitting shots, doing his thing, doing his dance. Lance make you dance. But, at some point, I think the frustration kicked in with Lance as well, man, because after a misled from Sean Williams, the LA Riot grabbed the rebound. And, of course, that's when the melee happened. The drive to the rim. Lance Stevenson grabs the guy, wrestles him to the ground. But while Lance Stevenson getting up, he puts the forearm in the dude's face, trying to get up. And it just, fists were thrown, but luckily no punches landed. The game was stopped for about 5 to 10 minutes. They ejected Lance. And once Lance was ejected, they got down to 2 players. So the game had to be forfeited. So the LA Riot won this game 39-30. It was a very short game. One thing I will say that Reggie Evans was sorely missed. The Miami 305, they got beat up on the boards 28-14. So they got doubled up on the boards because there was nobody to battle Dwight Howard down low. Another interesting note from this game is the fallout. There's going to be suspensions. I believe Michael Beasley is going to be suspended for game 2. And I think Lance Stevens is going to be suspended for game 3. This is huge because this is an 8-week league as far as regular season. 8 teams, 8 weeks. You cannot fall to 0-2. You cannot fall to 0-3. That is a guarantee that you're not going to make the playoffs in this league. There's only 4 slots, so the last thing you want to do is start off 0-2, 0-3. So they have an uphill battle because they're going to be without Michael Beasley for 1 week and without Lance for the other. So we're going to see how that plays out. But the LA Riot, they started off strong. One note I want to give is to Billy Preston. He was the LA Riot's draft pick. He looked great today. He had 12 and 6. He led the LA Riot in scoring. Dwight Howard had 8 points and 9 rebounds. Jordan Crawford had 9 points and 7 rebounds. So it was a very well-oiled machine over there as far as the LA Riot. And I'm going to keep an eye on them to see if they could keep playing that bully ball or if this was just an outlier because there was no Reggie Evans on the other side. We'll keep an eye on that. Okay, so for the third game of the day, we have the Chicago Triplets versus the Houston Rig Hands, led by Calvin Murphy, longtime NBA vet, very sharp-dressed guy, along with like Dr. J of the Big Three, probably the 2 most best-dressed guys in the Big Three. So we have the Chicago Triplets who were in the championship last year with Nas Core, with Trez Harrell, with Brandon Moss. They were so close until Chalmers hit that 3 in the corner. Probably the best Big Three championship game in the sports history and in Big Three history, of course. But yeah, man, let's get back into Chicago Triplets. They're trying to right the wrongs. They're trying to right their ship. They don't have Nas Core this year. It looks like they have Wesley Johnson. They have Leandro Barbosa. So we're going to see if they can fill in the gap that Nas Core is going to be leaving behind. Interesting tidbit for this game. There was no Leandro Barbosa, and there was no Montrezl Harrell. So the Chicago Triplets were essentially playing with 3 guys the entire game. It did not affect them as they came out and won 51-46. It was a very great game from Amir Johnson. He was a monster. He had 26 points and 10 rebounds. He was all over the floor. The vet was huffing and puffing, but he got it done. Brandon Moss had 14 and 6. And also, Wesley Johnson was the first pick in the Big Three draft this year. He chipped in with 11 points. So there goes your 51 points right there. I was a little disappointed in the Houston Rig Hands because I thought they would be able to take advantage of the fact that, Chicago Triplets, they had no subs. It was just those 3 guys playing. So I thought Houston would be able to wear those guys down. That wasn't the case. It more so seemed like it was the other way around. Derek Favors, his first game in the Big Three. I must say I wasn't really impressed. But I'm going to give him a break because this is his first game. He's still getting acclimated to the speed and the rules of the Big Three. But so far, so good coming out the gate. It wasn't a very strong showing. Kevin Murphy, however, no relation to the coach Calvin Murphy. He was a boss today. He had 26 and 6, but he just didn't have the necessary help to push the team forward. So they're going to fall to 0-1. And it's going to be interesting to see how Derek Favors adjusts to this league and see if he can provide some help for Kevin Murphy. If not, Kevin Murphy's going to be a one-man team out there all season, and it's going to be a long season for the Rig Hands if they don't get that taken care of. Let's move on to the next game. Okay, so for the final game of the day, we have the Dallas Power versus the Boston Ball Hogs. The Dallas Power, of course, led by Nancy Lieberman-Klein. The Boston Ball Hogs, of course, led by Gary Payton. Now, this is going to be a very interesting game because I did pick the Dallas Power to be in the championship along with the Detroit Amps. They're just stacked. They have Greg Monroe. They have Isaiah Stewart. They have Glenn Rice Jr. They have TJ Klein. They have Cameron Smith, who was the best newcomer in the Big Three last year. So they just have a stacked squad. I don't think that they have a weakness in their game. They don't have any flaws. They can shoot. They can slash. They can rebound. They can defend. You name it, the Dallas Power has it. Going up against the Boston Ball Hogs, who's probably the most hard-luck team in the Big Three, I don't think they've ever made the playoffs in their existence. They have Gary Payton at the helm, but I still think it's just going to be a tall task this year, even with the great squad. They have Garland Green, who's won a championship. They have Jeremy Pargo. They have Deshaun Stevens. They have a very solid squad, but I just think this year's Big Three is a little too stacked. I think they're going to be on the outside looking in again this year. But getting into the game, Isaiah Stewart started off hot. He started off with 10 straight points, just cutting, hitting buckets, just crossing people up, just step backs, you name it. Isaiah Stewart was hitting it in the first part of the game. That forced Gary Payton to, of course, adjust his game plan and start focusing on Isaiah Stewart. And, of course, Nancy Lieberman Klein, she said, okay, I'll counter that. I'm going to bring in my son, TJ Klein. He's going to start hitting guys up for some backdoor cuts and easy baskets, and that's exactly what happened. Glenn Rice had 7 assists. Isaiah Stewart had 17 points. TJ Klein had 8 points. Greg Monroe was being a beast down low. 14 points and 8 rebounds. He can hardly jump, but he grabs every single rebound that's around him. And Cameron Smith even added 7. It was just too much of a well-rounded effort from Dallas Power, and they wound up winning 51-46. Don't get me wrong. Garland Green had a great game, 18 and 8 for the Boston Ball Hogs. But once again, I just feel like this team, they don't have enough to contend with the big boys. I could be wrong. Gary Payton might be able to pull a rabbit out of his hat like he did with Bill like a couple of seasons ago. But I just don't see with this Ball Hogs team. They are just a hard luck team in the big three. No matter who's the coach, no matter who the players are, they just can't seem to get over the hump. And I don't see it being any different this year. But that Dallas Power team, oh my God, man. I might have to change my pick because there's no ISO Joe. I still got the Detroit Amps going into the championship, but the Dallas Power, they just look that strong to me. So we're going to see exactly how this plays out. So this recaps week 1. We had it all, man. We had fights, we had suspensions, we had game winners. It was an exciting week for week 1 of season 9 of the Big Three. I'm going to be here all season. I'm going to be keeping you guys posted. I'll be posting my other video as far as the predictions for week 2. I want to say thank you to everyone that's tuned in. Please hit the like and subscribe button. Share this with all of your friends, and I hope to grow this community. Thank you again. You have a great evening.